everyone, in today's episode of Cosplay 101, we are going to talk about one of the most important aspects of cosplay, sewing. I know, sewing can be intimidating to a lot of people, but it's not as difficult as you may think. Plus, unless you're only creating mecha costumes or giant suits of armor, sewing is pretty essential for creating costumes from scratch. Again, if you're a complete beginner to cosplay, it's not a bad idea to find existing pieces of clothing that you can use for your costumes. But if you really want to get into creating your own costumes from scratch, you're going to have to do some sewing. But don't worry, you don't have to use the sewing machine right away if you don't want to. Instead, hand sewing is a great place to start. You'll need straight pins, hand sewing needles, thread, scissors, a seam ripper, and a tape measure. There are, of course, other knickknacks that you'll need and use while hand sewing, but those are the absolute basics. And the best way to practice hand sewing is with some scrap fabric. There are lots of different types of stitches, as you'll find out. Check the video description for a link to the Simplicity website where they have an excellent visual guide to hand sewing stitches. Choose a couple of different stitches from the guide and practice them until you're comfortable. Hand sewing may seem tedious, and it certainly takes longer than using a machine. But if sewing machines make you nervous or you don't have access to one, you can absolutely still create costumes as long as you have needle and thread. It may take more time, but it is definitely possible. Most importantly, you're going to be using hand sewing at some point on most projects, whether it's finishing a seam, attaching a button, or sewing an area that may be difficult to reach with your sewing machine. Speaking of which, now let's talk about that sewing machine. Shopping for a sewing machine can be really overwhelming nowadays just because there's so many options out there. It's easy to get confused, especially because a lot of these models have crazy functions like memory stitching and embroidery. But if you're just starting out, you don't need a machine with all these fancy bells and whistles. As long as the machine comes with a variety of basic stitches, such as the straight stitch and the zigzag stitch, you'll be good to go. Brother, Singer, Simplicity, they're all great companies and they have great beginner models that you can find at your local fabric stores or stores like Walmart, Target, and Sears. And the best part, they're all under $100. Sewing machine needles, bobbins, a presser foot, and a zipper foot. You'll also want a maintenance kit that includes oil, a small screwdriver, and a small bristle brush. All of these are necessary to keep your machine running smoothly. Most machines come with them included, but if yours doesn't, you can find them at a fabric store. Once you have all of your supplies, you'll want to do the exact same thing you did with hand sewing, and that is practice, practice, and practice. Grab some scrap fabric and familiarize yourself with the machine settings. Overwhelmed yet? Hang in there, we're almost done. So you have your sewing supplies and you are just raring to get started on your cosplay, right? But whoa there, friend, you'd better slow down. Before you dive headfirst into garment construction, I highly suggest taking some time to play around with beginner sewing projects just to really learn how sewing works. Use the internet to look up tutorials and craft ideas that you can try. Buy a sewing handbook, which will give you detailed diagrams and explanations of stitches, seam finishing techniques, patterning, and a wide variety of advanced sewing skills. Also, consider taking a couple of sewing classes at your local fabric store or community college. Having a real-life instructor there to help you is one of the best learning tools you could ask for. Again, practice is the only way to learn. It'll take time, but don't get discouraged. If you find yourself getting frustrated with something, take a breath, step away from the sewing machine, and come back to it after you've calmed down. Otherwise, sewing while you're angry, you're more likely to make mistakes. Well, I really hope this guide was able to help you get started with sewing, or at least feel more comfortable about giving it a shot. Obviously, there's a lot that I did not cover, but we'll get into things like choosing fabrics and drafting patterns in future videos. For now, I've included links in the description to resources that should help you figure out the basics of sewing. And if you have any questions about anything that I covered in this video, please don't hesitate to ask. If you have suggestions for future Cosplay 101 topics, leave them in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, and remember, happy cosplaying!